draft lottery happened yesterday, and we now know the official order that the Chicago Bulls and all the teams will be drafting in. On today's episode, we're going to break down the best center prospects for the Chicago Bulls, some that are probably going to go ahead of the Bulls, some that are going to be right there where the Bulls draft are. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derrick Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get to this content for today. And for those that have been around here for a while, knows that the way we get into our draft bag here at Chicago Bulls Central is probably next to none other. And so we're going to go about this draft in a couple of different ways, right? I'm going to talk about players. We're going to go position by position, right? I think that's going to be where we start this off at. We're going to do center today. We'll do forwards tomorrow. There's going to be some overlap of maybe one guy, maybe even two guys on that list. So we'll get into that bag. And then after the position by position, we'll get into some of my favorite players, some sleepers, and then players that I want the Bulls to stay completely away from, right? So we'll do that. We're going to have a lot of content in regards to the draft between here and the actual draft, which goes down towards the end of June. So we got a lot of draft content coming. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it now to start off today. And the first player that we want to talk about when we're talking about centers right now, I guess before we got to talk about all this, right, is that, yes, the Bulls did not move up in the draft. The Dallas Mavericks won the number one overall pick. Yes, they technically beat the Bulls in a coin toss. That does not mean if the Bulls did it that they would have all of a sudden won. The draft lottery is a lot more complicated. I think people think that it is. So the draft lottery isn't as simple as, oh, let's draw for the number one pick. Oh, we pull this lottery ball. Oh, it's the Mavericks. They got it. The draft lottery is a point system, meaning that they have points. So everybody who has the draft odds, they come up with a number of points that you have to then get to get the number one pick. They keep drawing until the team that gets that number of points gets the number one pick. Boom. Then they move those lottery balls. They reset. They then do it for number two. Boom. They remove the team that won. They remove those lottery balls. They reset. Boom. They do it for number three. So it's not as simple as just, oh, well, because this team won the coin toss, their lottery ball got picked. Boom. That could have been us. It's a lot more complicated than that. That's why I'm not going to harp it on that point a lot, as I'm sure some other channels were. We're going to focus here on the content. I did not expect the Bulls to move up from number 12 anyway. I just did not want them to move down, of course, which they did not. And that means it still puts the Bulls in a place where they can get their center of the future in this draft. And that's what we came into this draft wanting. Yeah, it sucks. You don't get the franchise-altering talent like Cooper Flag, whatever there. But this draft coming in here is about what can you get that your team needs. And the Bulls can get a lot of what they need in this draft. And the first player we're going to talk about is a player that is probably going to be the number one or number two center taken in this draft, and that's Kahman Maluach, the center out of Duke. His measurements came in, and you know he was listed as 7'2". He measured more closely to about 7'1". He was close to 7'1" without shoes, which puts him at basically being 7'2", right? So it's misleading because, of course, if you don't pay attention to the with shoes or without shoes, some people will have you think basically that, oh, that means that they aren't as tall as what they were saying. It basically is. They're measured with shoes anyway, right? So by the time they get to the team, they're going to be the with shoes measurements are going to be the thing that make the most sense there when it comes down to it. But regardless of all that, you got Kaman in here. And while there are some people that have some doubts about Kaman, and let me be clear, don't get pissed off if you see somebody, if your favorite commentator has some doubt about one of your favorite players in this draft. That's part of the whole draft process is to have doubts. So Kaman Maluach's official measurement, 7 foot 3/4 of an inch, right? So basically 7'1" barefoot. He's basically 7'2", 252 pounds, 7'6", almost 7'7" wingspan. When it came down to it, looks like he's grown as well since the beginning of his freshman year, which it makes sense. He's only 18 years old, so there's that, right? When you look at Kaman, who and what can Kaman be at the next level, right? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. And so some of the comps that have been there for him have been, a more offensive JaVale McGee and Khalil Ware and some things like that. That's going to come down to how much he works on the shot, right? How much his shot ends up working out for him is going to be really good. But Kaman is a modern big man. He had a 6.8 block percentage, averaging 1.3 blocks. And keep in mind, he played on a team with Cooper Flagg and some pretty good shot blockers as well. He has that ability. An almost 20% rebound percentage. Only 6.6 is the raw number. But then again, he's playing with a really great rebounder in Cooper Flagg as well. 8.6 points per game, but a 73% true shooting percentage. Kaman is the perfect example of potential, right? Now, the thing is that I always like to judge it on when I'm going into a draft is what's the floor, right? Because it's more realistic that a player hits the floor or is closer to the floor than closer to their ceiling. It's the way that I like to judge it. It keeps me from getting too over on players, right, when it comes down to it. But let's be clear here. Kaman's only been playing basketball 4 or 5 years, right, which adds to what his potential ceiling could be for sure, right? He was a Sudanese refugee 4 years ago at an NBA academy, right, at 14 years old. So just think about that when it comes down to it. But when you look at him, at the bare minimum, he's going to be a lob threat and a really good defensive anchor and lob threat and shot blocker. And that's really good for a center, right? Now, there are some concerns about, hey, is he going to have the foot speed? Is he going to be able to rotate? He's going to be able to switch, things like that, right? But a player like Kaman is definitely a floor raiser for you on defense. And his pick and roll defense as well as his offense is really good, right? So I think when you look at this guy and you look at what he can be, the potential is out the wazoo. It's crazy. He can be an absolutely downright amazing center. But what can he be at his floor? And at his floor, I look at him and say he could probably be like a Zubac type player, like one of those players that at the bare minimum is your defensive specialist center. The question is that going to be your risk? And for some teams in the top 6, they're going to be willing to take that. He's a guy that always is looking around. He's surveying the court really good. I think if you get him with a really good coach, they're going to be able to develop some really good things out of him, right? So while the data and the advanced analytics really love Kahman Maluach, but it really comes down to how much is he going to be able to guard out the paint? Because we know in the modern NBA, you have to be able to guard out the paint, and that's something that you have to look for. And that is a concern here with Kaman. But overall, Kaman is probably one of the best center prospects in this draft. I doubt he falls to the Bulls, and it is what it is when it comes down to that, right? Kaman is a guy that I think is going to go very high in this draft. And unfortunately, I don't think the Bulls are even going to get the opportunity to have them on their radar, really, because I think he's going to go way ahead of the Bulls. Now, a couple of things could change that draft stock, right? It depends on where other teams fall, who moves, because I do think a team like the Houston Rockets is probably going to move out of that pick to try to get themselves a star. Hell, the Spurs could even move out the number 2 overall pick to try to get themselves a star, but we'll see. The next guy is another guy that I do think he's definitely one of the best centers in this draft, but he is a guy that has the opportunity to kind of fall out of the Bulls or be taken ahead of where the Bulls are going to draft, and that's Derik Queen. Now, the question for Derik Queen isn't anything that he can do offensively. He has the total package offensively, period, right? You look at playmaking, his ability to be on ball, his interior scoring, his footwork's really good, his rebounding's really good. He's a really good finisher, right? But the problem is offense. And that's one of the issues where it stands here with him is that it's defense. How do you shape him up to be defensively at the next level? His measurements are all pretty much exactly what we thought. 6'9", barefoot, a little over 6'9", 247 pounds, 7-foot wingspan. I think if you're going to be a 6'9", 6'10" center, you have to have at least a 7-foot wingspan. That's the bare minimum, right? He grew an inch since the beginning of his freshman year till now, so shout out to him there. But I think overall, like when you look at Derik Queen, and the thing that you have to judge is, all right, like he could be a modern day Zach Randolph. He can be similar to Boogie, right? But what are you getting defensively? And maybe the Bulls aren't worried about that. Maybe does come down to best overall talent. But if we're talking about the defensive fit, right? We talked a lot about this summer and the importance of having a particular type of defensive center when you're going to have Coby White and Josh Giddey as your backcourt. You need a center that not only can protect the rim, but also a center that can rotate, that can guard multiple positions. He doesn't really shape up to be that. But then again, he's so good at everything inside the arc at scoring wise maybe you look at it and say, hey, we just got to get a defender next to him at the 4, right? Maybe it's move Modest to the 3. We'll get a really good defender next to him at the 4, and we're good. We're off to the races there. And that could be a way that you can supplement and build your team going forward. The problem is the Bulls have been trying to do that with Vooch for the last 4 years. Now, again, I don't want to compare that and say just because they didn't have that success in the past, it means they're not going to have it with a completely different type of younger player. But I do think that there's something that you actually have to look at that, right? Now, when you look at his scoring as well, he's 68.4% at the rim. That's really good. That's really good, right? And so I think when you look at it, that's pretty good. He's 48.4% in the paint overall, right? So that's everything in the paint, and 68% is at the rim. That's really good. That's really solid. Some of the problems when it comes down to him as well is that it's the mid-range. And when you're just a purely, basically, not purely, because he does give effort defensively. That's the thing about Derik Queen. He's given effort on the defensive side of the ball. He may not always be the best on-ball defender, but he's not like Vooch, who's falling asleep on defense. Queen is an active defender. He's just not very good. And maybe there's some signs that he can turn into that being really good when it comes down to it. But I think that 15 to 18 footer is where you gotta work on your game a little bit, right? That's where he's gonna have to work on his game. But I think overall, his ability to drive, his ability to dribble and pass, and his playmaking, all those type of things are really good. He's drawing player comps again, and player comps are the skill set, not the caliber of player. I think I always have to say that. But Domantas Sabonis, Thad Young, Boris Diaw, these are some of the comps that have been there for him. And I think overall, Derik Queen is a player that, when you throw in that Zach Randolph comp as well, like this is a player that can be that type of modern player that really can be a workhorse for you. So again, not mad at Derik Queen being there. Next up, Thomas Sorber, another guy that we've talked a lot about already here on this channel. He's a guy that his measurements came in and actually put him above a guy that I actually do like a lot as well, in Asa Newell, who we'll talk about here on this list as well. But when you look at Thomas Sorber, 6'9" that he measured with officially, that was barefoot. So it puts him at about 6'10" when it comes down to it, right? 262 pounds, really good center weight, and 7'6" wingspan, a 9-foot standing reach. Again, the measurements are ridiculous for Thomas Sorber. He's a guy that's going to be right there available for the Chicago Bulls. I know some mock drafts are starting to have Thomas Sorber go a little bit later, but let's wait till after the draft combine and see how they feel. I think his ability, he's not an explosive athlete, right, when it comes down to it, and that's fine. But when you look at his feel for the game, his post moves are really good. He has the ability to be that defensive anchor as well for you. He's a much better shot blocker, 2 blocks per game with a 7.4% block percentage. That's really good. Also, he plays in the passing lanes, 1.5 steals per game, 8.5 rebounds. Again, that's going to be a little bit better for him. Georgetown big men could be a little bit differently, right? But I think when you look at him, whether you see him as a 4 or a 5 long term, I do think overall that when it comes down to it, his ability to work, the work that he put in, that's where it's going to go into. But his defense, that's the thing that you have to look at for. Is he going to be able to be that type of defensive presence at 6'9" with a 7'5" wingspan in the NBA that he was in college? And that's a legitimate question there, right? And some people have said that his height is going to cap his defensive ceiling. And maybe that's true, right? And maybe you eventually have to move him over to the 4, whatever happens there. I'm not mad at the Thomas Sorber and Modest Buzelis 3-4 if that ends up being the case. I think he can play center at the next level. It really comes down to how well he deals with the NBA physicality day in and day out, but with more bigs that are going out to the perimeter. And again, by perimeter, I don't just mean three-point shooting. I mean that they live more in the mid-range as well. I think he's going to be able to be pretty fine at the NBA level defensively. Offensively, again, this is a guy that can run rim to rim. Again, he's not the quickest. He's not a gazelle out there, right? He's not the quickest when it comes down to it. But I think he's going to be fine in a more up-tempo based offense as well. I think his feel for the game as well is something that it's hard to put a tangible aspect on that, but I think he's going to be really good there as well overall. Now, the thing that it comes down to as well is his offensive rebounding is really good, but there's some questions on how much is that going to translate to the NBA level. Projecting to be a better defensive rebounder than offensive rebounder, but when you look at some of his comps, Roy Hibbert is a comp of his as well, right? So you look at that, again, skill set, not player caliber, but Al Horford is another comp for him. Wendell Carter Jr. is another comp for him as far as skill set. So you look at that type of guy, and, the Bulls haven't necessarily always had the best success, which could bring some trepidation from Bulls fans, understandably so. And we'll see what's going to happen with that one, right? But I think if you look at Thomas Sorber and what he can do, he's a disciplined guy. He has very high basketball IQ. That's one of the reasons we saw like Zach Collins play really good for us when he was a starter, is the basketball IQ. Thomas Sorber has more athleticism, is better defensively, and I do think the post moves that he has already are pretty good, and he can develop those into bigger and better post moves as well when it comes down to it. The high end is great. The floor, I think you're looking at another guy that the floor is you're looking at as a shot blocking, rim running, lob threat big, but not as much of a lob threat because doesn't have the jump out the gym athleticism, which I think is a thing that comes down to it as well. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens to it. But when you look at what he's done as far as block rate, steal rate, in under 40 minutes, the what he creates defensively, the playmaker he is defensively, is something you really can't overlook. So I think like Thomas Sorber is a very unique product. You're either gonna love him or you're not. But I like Thomas Sorber a lot for the Chicago Bulls. The next guy up is a guy that a lot of us has talked about, and he's going to be on the forward list as well because power forward or center, we'll see what it comes down to. But when you look at it, Rasheer Fleming, ridiculous measurables. 6'9" with the legit 7'5" wingspan. Rasheer Fleming is an absolute monster. He measured in at 6'8.5" in the draft combine, so puts him right there at 6'9.5" when he has shoes on. 232 pounds, 7'5" wingspan, a 9'1" standing reach, right? His measurables are ridiculous. Now, what Thomas Sorber brings that is similar to like a Rasheer Fleming, which could make him more of a 4, is that he's a legit shooter. Rasheer Fleming can shoot that ball. And so because of that, you're going to see like his ability to wingspan, his positional versatility, his athleticism as well. Whereas Rasheer Fleming isn't really the athlete. Whereas Thomas Sorber isn't really the athlete, Rasheer Fleming is. Athleticism, three-point shooting. He does shape up to be a 3-and-D style big, which, take that for what you will. The question, though, that always comes down to it is he going to be a 4 or is he going to be a 5? That's a big question for him, right? One of the comps for him that me and Brian have talked about is that he's basically Taj Gibson with a three-point shot. And I don't know about y'all, but I'll take that, right? And so when you look at Rasheer Fleming and how he can shape up to be, Pascal, Obi Toppin, these are good players that are also comps for him as well. And I think that he has a really good type of a prototype, right? That he fits in. He has the wingspan that we know that AK loves as well, right? And I think his three-point shooting is something that's going to be legit on a team that can use three-point shooting. A pick and pop big man, right? That's going to be the thing. His self-creation isn't great. We got Josh Giddey. We're not too worried about your ability to create for yourself so much. But I think when you come down to it, like, this is a guy that brings a lot. The shot blocking as well. Didn't even talk about his shot blocking. He's a really good shot blocker. He has great timing on that. So then you're having Modest and him as both shot blockers out on the floor for you. I like this guy a lot. I think that he can do it. I think what he can grow into is really going to be good. His growth in his three-point shot is going to be something that a lot of teams are enticed by. With a guy like Rasheer Fleming as well, he's going to be a really good finisher. I think in the NBA level as well. He's going to have to work on some advanced back to the basket moves if he's going to be a center in the NBA. But I think when you look at his game, he's going to be a guy that everything that he does is going to translate over to the NBA. I don't understand why some mocks have him going as low as the 20s personally. But like I said, I think the draft combine is going to kick that up a little bit for him as well. This is a guy that brings a very rare feel for the game, as well as shooting and defense at that position. I think he's going to be perfectly fine at the NBA. This is a guy I'm really excited to get in the Bulls uniform if we do end up drafting him. Rasheer Fleming has become one of my top prospects in this draft, which we'll get into when we get to the after we get through all the positions, right? So look out for that, Rasheer Fleming for the Chicago Bulls. The last one is a guy that I came into this draft process extremely high on. And I'm still high on him, but I think that we're focusing on centers. And the more that I see, the more that I have questions on, is Asa Newell going to be a center at the next level? 6'9" barefoot is what they measured him at. So 6'10", about what is not the 6'11" that he was initially thought to be, but 6'10", 223 pounds, a 6'11" wingspan. That's where I have my concern at as a center. Like I said, I like my centers, if you're going to be 6'9", 6'10", to have a legit 7-foot wingspan. He's close, right? So that's close enough. Almost 9-foot standing reach. But I think Asa Newell, when you look down to it, the more that you go into this draft, the more he becomes a specialist, right? And so a guy like Asa Newell, who has really tons of defensive versatility, I think that this guy has the switchability that you look for in your modern day bigs. I think he's going to be able to just switch. We talked about that need of having a big man that can switch on this Bulls team specifically. I think he's going to have that in tons, right? He's going to be able to switch a lot. He has really good athleticism. He's shaped up to be a solid lob threat as well. The interior scoring that he has a little bit more back to the basket moves as well. You look at him at 29% three-point shooter, so he's not going to be that threat to stretch the floor. I don't need him to be a three-point shooter. I need him to be able to hit three-point shots if they're open, though, which does shape him that he can do that, right? So I think when you look at his block percentages, his steal percentages, it kind of looks more like a player that's going to play power forward. And the question is that are you okay with that? Are you okay with having Asa Newell as your starting four and moving Buzelis to the three long term? If they are, great, right? And that goes with a couple of these guys in this class. But I think overall, like, it just comes down to that. I think that on offense is the bigger question. Who is he going to be on offense? And does that matter if you're having him next to Buzelis, which is a question there? But he's a guy that has really good upside. He knows when to cut to the basket royal. He can be enough of a lob threat as well. He cuts to the rim really good in that time on pick and rolls and moving off the ball. He has really good off-ball basketball IQ as well. But I do think that you are going to have to be very intense in his development, right? And you look some of the comps for him. Zeke Naji, Precious Achua, Nick Claxton have been some of the comps for him. David Lee as well. Drew Gooden have been some comps for him. So, we'll see what it comes down to with that. He's almost 20 years old as well. I like Asa Newell. It's just, if you're looking at center, which is this list, it puts him farther down on the center list for me. Maybe pushes him further up when we talk about our forward list, which we'll get into tomorrow. But overall, we'll see what it comes down to. But that's my time. Let me know what you guys think. As far as centers, I know people are going to bring up Danny Wolf. He's going to be kind of on my sleepers list. People are going to bring up Rocco as well. Listen, I see where you guys are bringing up Rocco. The problem is you're not drafting that at number 12. And if you think about drafting that, he may not make it to number 45 where the Bulls pick at in that second round either. And here's the thing. We need a center that can play now. Rocco is 2 years away from being 2 years away. He has no marketable or translatable NBA skill right now at all. For those that are bringing up Reynaud, that bring up Kalkbrenner, that bring up Rocco, these are guys that are really far the hell off, man. Really far the hell off from being anything at the NBA that we can bet on anytime soon, and they may very well be out the NBA in 2 or 3 years. But we'll cover them on different versions of these lists. We'll get to them. Don't worry about them. But thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.